while Costco, Amazon, Target, Best Buy, and other major corporations have all raised their minimum wage in recent years to at least $15 an hour. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from the CEO of Costco. The minimum wage at Walmart has remained stuck at $11 an hour for the last 3 years. The result? 760,000 workers at Walmart. Walmart is the largest employer in America. 760,000 employees, about half of their U.S. workforce, are paid less than $15 an hour. Now, I don't know. Maybe if you are a billionaire family, you may not understand this, but the simple truth is that no one in America can live with dignity, can raise a family on $11 or $12 an hour. And I must say, on a personal level, that I have talked to too many employees in this country who, with tears in their eyes, tell me about the struggles that they are having, trying to feed their kids, pay their rent on the starvation wages that they receive.
All right, so there's Bernie Sanders yesterday basically talking about how Walmart, one of the wealthiest companies out there, pays such low wages that a big chunk of their workers are actually on food stamps, on Medicaid, and getting other public assistance. So this is basically a large corporation with wealthy owners free riding off the American taxpayer. And yet here we are having an argument right now as to whether or not a $15 minimum wage should be a thing, which is ridiculous. It should have been a thing in 2016. It's now 2021. Now the minimum wage should at least be $22 to $30 an hour. So as far as I'm concerned, that ship sailed, but we're still having this argument. And part of why we're having this argument is because the Democratic Party doesn't seem to want to stop trying to worship two masters. They want to worship their corporate donors on one side, and then they want to claim to be about the working class on the other. And obviously these two things are at loggerheads. So Bernie Sanders has now declared that he's going to force the vote on the fight for 15. Here to discuss this with me and other things is Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire Media. Welcome, Farron.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I thought you were the perfect person to get angry with me about this. Yesterday he tweeted an unelected staffer should not be deciding whether 30 million Americans should get a pay raise. The staffer he's referring to is the parliamentarian. There's a lot going on here with the parliamentarian, so I want to talk about that for a second. The press secretary an hour ago had a press conference where she was questioned on this. Here you have Biden basically going to arm's length to fight for Neera Tanden to get confirmed. That's important to him. He said he will do everything he can to have that happen, even though she's completely unpopular. And yet, here we have a thing where we need people to get higher wages for the obvious reasons, and he's not going to go to the mat for that. It would take one vote to make this change, Kamala Harris's. And then it would take another 60 votes to override Kamala Harris's decision. Yet this is what the press secretary said an hour ago.
The parliamentarian decision, you said that he respects that decision, but progressives don't understand this. In some respect, they're like, why not fight for this? So why is the White House not more aggressively challenging that and sending the vice president to try and potentially overrule that with the vote?
Well, the decision for the vice president to vote to overrule or to take a step to overrule is not a simple decision. It would also require 50 votes. As you know, it's not a one-step decision. And the president and the vice president both respect the history of the Senate. They are both formerly served in the Senate, and that's not an action we intend to take. But the president is committed to raising the minimum wage, to working to determine the best vehicle forward to doing that. That's why he put it in the package. He wants it to be raised to $15 an hour, and he will be in touch with leaders from all wings of the party in determining the best path forward for that. Go ahead, Jeff.
A follow-up to Jeff's question, which strikes me. The White House doesn't have 50 votes to confirm Neera Tanden as OMB director, and yet we heard from the White House Chief of Staff say that the White House they're going to fight our guts out was the phrase he used, to get her confirmed. So why push for that and not push as hard, one could say, for raising the minimum wage? You could make the argument that the American people stand to benefit more from a higher wage than they would from a chosen OMB director.
Well, I think that's mixing a few things kind of irresponsibly, if I'm just being totally honest. I would say on the minimum wage, the president included a raise of the minimum wage in his package because he felt strongly that it's long overdue, that men and women working hard, trying to make ends meet, shouldn't be living at the poverty level. That's why he put it in his package. There is a process that it goes through, a parliamentary process when it's a reconciliation bill, as you know, but for people who haven't been following all the nitty gritty of this, because it's a budgetary bill. That's why it went through the process. And, again, I would send you to talk to leaders in Congress to see if they have the 50 votes necessary. But regardless, the president, the vice president have made the decision they're not going to move forward with that step, but all of experience. She is qualified. She is prepared to lead the budget team, and we're continue, of course, to fight for the confirmation of every nominee that the president puts forward. We'll see if we have 50 votes. That's part of the journey. That's part of democracy in action.
I do not even know what is going on here. She's saying it's not a simple process when it actually is. Kamala Harris could just override the parliamentarian. What are your thoughts on this?
It's an absolute lie. I mean, let's just call it what it is here. I mean, she's straight up lying. We got used to this, I guess, for 4 years, and she thinks she can just slip it in because that's what people, have become accustomed to. But no, this isn't true. I mean, as you just said, Kamala Harris can absolutely come out and say, not just override it, but that we're not listening to this advice. Because that's what this is. This isn't even an actual rule.
Right.
Before 1935, the parliamentarian didn't even exist.
Right.
It was a thing they just made up because they wanted to. And so you can either do it that way. You can have Vice President Harris come out and say, yeah, thanks for the advice, but we're not taking it. Or two, you can just fire him. Happened 20 years ago when Republicans wanted a tax cut. And so they just said, well, since you're saying we can't do this, we're going to fire you.
Right.
And then we can do it. So there's options. There's lots of different options that are very easy.
I agree with you, Farron. Here's the other thing. Parliamentarians, in my opinion, I'm saying this based on experience, what I've seen at DNC meetings, where I've seen at the California Democratic Party meetings, from talking to insiders in the party. And I'm sure the same is true of the Senate, just on a different scale. But parliamentarians aren't there necessarily to preserve Rogers or rules of order, right? The parliamentarian handbook. They're there to do the bidding of leadership, to find reasons or rules to support what the leadership wants. So how far up the food chain do you think this goes? Is this really the case that they don't want to overstep their boundaries with the parliamentarian and want to be respectful? Or is it that they want to not have the $15 minimum wage as part of the COVID relief package? Or do you think it's something in between?
It could be something in between, but I think really what it is that this isn't something that they care too much about. I don't think that they're legitimate with saying that they want this. They're using it as an excuse to say, oh, shucks, guys, we really tried super hard. Like we asked our mom if we could do it, and she said no, so dang it. Oh no. But no, look, I don't know exactly what their reasoning is here for not even wanting to push this. Because to me, that's really where we need to get some answers here is what's the problem? What's the holdup? Why do you oppose this? This doesn't affect you.
Right.
This isn't something you're not paying it out of your pocket, but it will stimulate the overall U.S. economy. And sure, company is going to have to pay a little bit more money in the beginning, and it's going to reduce income or revenue a little bit, but you're going to see it return tenfold when people start getting bigger paychecks. Because as we all know, what happens to the people at the bottom of the economic food chain when you give them more money? They spend it, not because they're bad with money, but because they have to spend it. These are the people, and I know because I've been there plenty of times, they put off things like car repairs, they put off going to the doctor, they put off all kinds of things that they need to do, but they don't have the money to do it. So when you give them these raises, they go out there and they spend this money. They get caught up, essentially, is what we're talking about. And for some reason, this administration isn't willing to fight for that.
Right.
And that to me seems odd. This is hugely popular. It is supported by most Americans. So what's really happening behind the scenes here? That's what we need to know.
That's what we need to know. So to treat the parliamentarian as a sacred cow is absolutely absurd to me. So having said that, though, this morning there was an announcement that Biden is deploying the Defense Authorization Act so that this vaccine from Johnson & Johnson Merck and them can get together to work on putting this out there. So when it seems to be something that in some way benefits a corporation where it doesn't actually have anything to do with structural change that will help the working class, they seem to be able to go to the mat for it and make that happen. And here we have something simple where there's no sacred cow here. The parliamentarian is not a sacred cow. Go ahead and slay it. I mean, like you said, fire it, really, if you want to. Or just overrule it with Kamala Harris's vote. I don't see what is not simple here. It really is that simple. So I'm curious to see what happens next with the Bernie Sanders camp. I think he's a little bit more fired up than he was previously. I think he is going to fight to force the vote. I'd like to see him do it. So he's getting outside pressure. Warren Gunnels, who is Bernie's chief of staff, had a tweet yesterday. If you don't follow Warren Gunnels on Twitter, I suggest that you do. He's fantastic. But he basically said the parliamentarian advised today that we can provide billions of dollars to private insurance companies with 51 votes. But we need 60 votes to raise the wages of 32 million workers by increasing the minimum wage to 15. Yes, that is absurd. So yeah, it is absurd. And then SEIU, the union, came in with a tweet this morning, and they're turning up the heat as well. SEIU tweeted out, "We elected you. We expect you to deliver real relief and a $15 minimum wage. No excuses." So I think that is necessary. I think union management needs to really put the pressure on here. And everybody needs to keep putting that pressure on. Do you think, what do you think is going to happen next in this drama?
Well, hopefully Bernie does everything in his power to make this a reality. And of course, then at that point, we've got to worry about your mansions and your cinemas and
right.
Those folks. But I think at this time, too, we have to talk about the fact that the Democrats, we are watching them in very slow motion commit political suicide.
Yeah.
This is popular. You have to deliver. And let's be frank here. You've got 1 year. By this time next year, we're going to be talking about primary challengers. We're going to be talking about all of these things ahead of the midterms. So you've got 2021 to do something great and grand for the American public.
Right.
And instead, in this last week, this entire administration seems to have just fallen apart and become what all of us on the left feared it was going to be. We got a 4-week honeymoon, really, of, hey, here's a good environmental executive order. Hey, we got some vaccines rolling out.
Right.
Awesome. And then suddenly we're bombing Syria, and we're not fighting for minimum wage, and we're fighting way too hard for Tina-Desiree. Like, that fight also makes no sense. What's really driving their drive to get her in there? It's not like she's the most qualified person on the planet.
Right.
So there's so many weird things that are happening that defy all logic right now. But at the end of the day, all of it amounts to one thing, and that is the Democrats are setting themselves up to lose big time in 2022.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.